The galaxy had never seen such a strange union before, a mighty alien queen and a human man, standing together, hand in hand, before 1,000 glowing eyes in the grand hall of Virine Prime. Queen Zalara, ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the Orion cluster, was feared by every living being. Her name alone could silence rebellions and make armies surrender. She was known for her strength, her pride, and her power. Her people called her the Starfire Queen, for her armor shimmered like burning gold whenever she walked among them, and beside her stood Ryan Hale, a simple human from Earth. He wasn't a warrior of her kind, nor a prince from another world. He had no glowing eyes, no wings, no strange energy flowing through his veins. He was ordinary. Yet when he looked at her, there was something powerful in his gaze, calm, steady, and warm. The moment the royal guards opened the great doors, the hall fell silent. Thousands of alien dignitaries whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they were seeing. A human, one hissed. He's so fragile, another sneered. He wouldn't survive a week in our gravity. Why would our queen choose that? Zalara heard every whisper, but her expression never changed. Her face remained still, her crown gleaming under the light of 7 suns. She had made her choice, a choice that defied logic, tradition, and her people's pride. Ryan walked beside her, dressed not in royal robes but in a simple black uniform, the one he had worn as a captain in Earth's defense forces. He bowed respectfully to her people, even though their eyes burned with insult and disbelief. As the ceremony began, the Queen's high advisor, an ancient creature with silver scales, spoke aloud, his voice echoing through the hall. "Your Majesty, are you certain of this bond? This human carries no title, no bloodline, no strength." The Virine Empire was not built on emotion. The Queen's golden eyes flashed. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "it is time it learns." She turned to Ryan, who met her gaze without fear. He gently took her hand, and smaller in his, warm and trembling. For a second, the mighty Queen forgot the crowd. She saw only him, the man who had once saved her life on a forgotten battlefield, bleeding and half dead, yet refusing to leave her side. When he first met her, Zalara was not a queen but a wounded warrior. She had crashed on a barren planet after a failed ambush. It was Ryan, a human soldier on a peace mission, who found her ship. While her own kind had abandoned her, the human carried her to safety. He treated her wounds. He spoke to her like an equal, and for the first time in her long life, Zalara had felt something she never knew before: peace. Now, as the marriage vow echoed through the grand hall, she felt the same calmness again. Her people might hate this union, but her heart told her the truth. Ryan was different. When the ceremony ended, the guests bowed reluctantly. The Queen and her new husband stepped out onto the palace balcony, looking over the city lights that stretched beyond the horizon. The night breeze brushed against them. Zalara stood in silence, her face cold and unreadable. "You know they will never accept you," she said quietly. Ryan smiled faintly, looking at the stars above. "That's all right," he said. "I didn't marry them. I married you." Something inside the Queen melted. She, the ruler of 10,000 worlds, the being who had conquered galaxies, felt her eyes soften. For the first time, she didn't feel like a queen. She felt like a woman, standing beside someone who saw her not as a symbol of fear, but as someone worth protecting. And though the stars shone bright above them, it was his warmth beside her that made the night truly beautiful. Deep down, the Queen didn't know it yet, but this fragile-looking human would soon show her what real strength meant. Real strength, not of the body, but of the heart. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into peaceful months. Queen Zalara ruled her empire with grace and power. But something in her had changed since her marriage. She was softer now, not weak, but more human in her ways. She listened more, smiled more, and sometimes even walked among her people without her guards. Her ministers whispered that the human had changed her, and perhaps they were right. Ryan Hale lived quietly inside the Crystal Palace. He didn't care about titles or royal protocols. He often spent hours in the gardens, fixing the old fountains or reading ancient texts from alien libraries. The servants adored him because he treated everyone with kindness. He thanked them, remembered their names, and never ordered anyone around. But outside the palace walls, not everyone was pleased. The galaxy was vast and full of eyes. One of those eyes belonged to the Core Dominion, a brutal, warlike race that had long envied the power of the Vereen Empire. When news of the Queen's human husband reached them, they laughed with cruelty. The mighty Queen of Fire has fallen in love with a fragile ape. Their warlord roared, "If this is her weakness, we shall exploit it." Soon after, the core fleets began moving across the stars. Silent, massive, and ready for war. One cold evening, while the Queen and Ryan sat together in the Royal Observatory, alarms echoed across the city. Red lights filled the palace halls. The night sky outside the window suddenly burned with streaks of fire, warships entering orbit. Solara stood up instantly, her golden armor appearing around her in a shimmer of light. Her calm face turned to steel. "They've come," she whispered. Ryan's heart tightened. "Who?" "The Core Dominion. They seek to destroy us." Before he could speak, her generals entered, kneeling before her. "Your Majesty, our outer colonies are under attack." "The Core are advancing faster than expected." Ryan clenched his fists. "Then I'm coming with you." Solara turned sharply toward him. "No, Ryan." "This is not your fight. It is my home now," he said quietly. "That makes it my fight too." She looked at him, her heart torn between love and fear. "You don't understand. The Core are not like your Earth soldiers. They are monsters born for war. You're human. You'll die out there." He took a slow step toward her, his voice calm but firm.
"Zalara, on Earth we fought wars too.
We fought even when we knew we might lose, because that's what love and loyalty mean. I won't stand behind you while you bleed for me." Her golden eyes softened, then hardened again. "Promise me you'll stay safe," she said, almost pleading. "I can't promise that," Ryan replied. "But I can promise I'll come back." The Queen hesitated. Then she reached out and touched his face, something she rarely did in front of her guards. "You foolish brave man," she whispered. "You are my heart, not my soldier. Let me protect you." Before Ryan could reply, she turned to her generals. "Prepare the fleet. The Queen goes to war." The next morning, the Vereen warships rose into the burning sky, their engines lighting the clouds like sunrise. Solara stood at the command bridge, her armor shining, her expression unreadable. Ryan watched her from the palace balcony, his chest tight. He felt useless, powerless, the very thing everyone called him. But deep inside, something began to stir. Memories of battles he had fought long ago, friends lost, promises made. He whispered to himself, "I won't let her fall." As the fleet vanished into the stars, the Queen carried a secret fear, not of death, but of losing the one person who had taught her what love truly meant. And Ryan Hale, the quiet human no one respected, looked up at the war-torn sky and silently began to prepare for what was coming. He knew that soon, his real strength would be tested, and the galaxy would finally understand what it meant to make an enemy of humanity. The war burned across the stars like wildfire. World after world fell under the brutal hands of the Core Dominion. Their ships were larger, their weapons deadlier, and their soldiers fought like beasts without fear or mercy. For the first time in centuries, Queen Zalara's empire was losing. She stood inside her flagship, watching the holographic map flicker red with lost territories. Her generals shouted strategies, their voices sharp and desperate, but the Queen's golden eyes were cold and silent. She had seen many battles, but none like this. The Core moved like they already knew her every plan, and deep inside, Zalara knew something worse. They weren't only after her empire. They wanted her. They wanted to break the Queen who once ruled 10,000 worlds. For weeks she fought without rest. Her armor was scorched, her body bruised, but she never stopped. Every order, every strike, every decision, all for her people. Yet even her might could not hold back the endless tide. Meanwhile, back on Vereen Prime, Ryan Hale watched the holoscreens every night. Each report was worse than the last. He could see her face on the battlefield. Tired, fierce but slowly fading. He had begged the advisors to let him help, to send him to her side, but they refused. "You're only human," they said. "You'd be a burden to her, not a help." Ryan walked out of the council chamber that day with fire in his eyes. A burden? Maybe, but he refused to stand, idle while the woman he loved fought for her. Life. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Core fleet broke through, the last line of defense, and surrounded Vereen Prime. The skies burned with fire, cities crumbled, and screams filled the night. Queen Zalara led the defense personally. Her ship, the Starfire Blade, glowed with the last energy of the Empire's core. She fought like a goddess, her blade cutting through enemy after enemy. But even she had limits. Her power core was failing, her forces were scattered, and the core warlord himself, a monstrous being with armor of black steel, appeared on the battlefield. He towered above her, laughing as the palace walls fell apart. "So this is the mighty queen," he mocked. "All this power wasted on a woman who married a human." Zalara's breath was heavy, her body trembling with exhaustion. "My husband," she said coldly, "has more honor than your entire species." The warlord laughed cruelly. "Honor won't save you." He raised his blade, striking her to the ground. Her armor cracked and blood stained the silver floor. Still, she tried to stand. She wasn't fighting for her throne anymore. She was fighting for the man who believed in her when everyone else doubted. But her strength was fading. Her blade fell from her hands. As the warlord lifted his weapon for the final blow, a faint sound echoed through the chaos, a sharp, rhythmic beep. The warlord frowned and turned his head. A small light was flashing near the edge of the destroyed hall, a human beacon signal. Then came a voice, calm and cold through the comlink. "Step away from my wife." The warlord froze. Even the queen's eyes widened. She knew that voice, and deep, steady, unmistakable. The air began to tremble. Outside, the sky lit up as something entered the atmosphere. Fast, powerful and glowing like a comet. From the smoke and fire, a dark ship broke through the clouds, old, battle-scarred, and unmistakably human. The core soldiers paused in confusion. They had never seen a ship like that. The queen's heart raced as the ship descended through the flames. It landed hard, shaking the ground. The ramp opened slowly, and from the shadows, a figure stepped out, armored, silent, and familiar. It was Ryan Hale. But he was not the gentle human they once mocked. This was a soldier, the kind of human the universe had forgotten existed. His visor glowed blue, his steps heavy and sure. He looked at the fallen queen, then at the warlord towering above her. For a moment, the battlefield went completely silent. Then Ryan's voice cut through the smoke, cold, sharp, and filled with something the aliens could not understand. "Touch her again," he said, "and I'll show you what humanity really is." The battlefield was silent for a heartbeat. Even the roaring flames seemed to stop when Ryan Hale stepped out of the smoke. The core soldiers stood frozen, staring at the small human who dared walk toward them. Compared to their towering bodies and heavy armor, Ryan looked fragile, thin, small, almost unthreatening. But there was something in his walk, something cold and unyielding, that made even monsters hesitate. Queen Zalara could barely lift her head. Her vision was blurred, her body broken. But when she saw him, her heart nearly stopped. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What have you done?" He walked to her slowly, kneeling beside her, his gloved hand gently brushing the blood from her cheek. "You told me to stay safe," he said softly, his voice low and calm. "But I couldn't. Not while you were out here alone." Before she could reply, the core warlord's deep laugh broke through the silence. "So this is your savior? This little creature?" he sneered. "Does your heart beat faster for him, Queen?" Ryan stood up, his armor glowing faintly. He looked up at the giant warlord without fear. "You should have stayed in the shadows," he said quietly. The warlord raised his weapon, laughing. "And what will you do, human? Cry?" Ryan didn't answer. He simply lifted his wrist and pressed a small switch on his armor. A pulse of blue light spread across the battlefield, sharp, electric, and powerful. In an instant, a swarm of drones dropped from the sky, small and fast like silver comets. They surrounded Ryan in a spinning formation, their lights glowing with deadly energy. The core soldiers shouted and opened fire, but the drones moved faster, creating a glowing shield around the human. Blaster fire ricocheted harmlessly off it. Ryan's voice came through the comms, calm and steady. "Protocol Omega, engage." The drones exploded outward, releasing shockwaves that tore through the enemy ranks. The ground trembled as alien warriors were thrown into the air. Smoke and dust filled the sky. Queen Zalara stared in disbelief. This was no ordinary human armor. This was advanced, experimental, Earth's last war technology. built for survival on worlds that tried to kill men with every breath. Ryan moved like a shadow through the fire, his rifle glowing blue. Every shot he fired was perfect, precise, unstoppable. The core soldiers, once fearless, began to retreat, roaring in panic. The warlord charged at him with a thunderous roar. His massive blade crashed into the ground where Ryan had been standing, sending sparks flying. But the human had already moved. Fast, too fast. He jumped onto the warlord's arm, climbing up like a predator. With one swift motion, he drove his energy blade into the creature's shoulder joint. The warlord screamed, swinging wildly, but Ryan didn't let go. "You think strength is about size," Ryan said through gritted teeth. "You think it's about fear, but you'll never understand." He leaped off the warlord's back and fired his gauntlet cannon into the creature's chest. The impact sent the warlord crashing to the ground itself cracking beneath his fall. Ryan landed hard, his armor sparking, his breath heavy. But his eyes, those calm, human eyes, never wavered. He walked back to Zalara, helped her sit up gently, and smiled faintly. "It's over," he whispered. But she shook her head, still staring at him in disbelief. "Ryan, how did you do this?" He looked at her quietly for a moment. "Humans learned long ago that strength isn't just in muscle or metal. It's in the will to protect the people you love." Solara's eyes softened. She wanted to speak, but her throat ached with emotion. She had seen countless warriors die, but none fight like him. Not for power, not for glory, but for love. Behind them, the last of the core ships began to fall from the sky, exploding in waves of fire. The battle was ending, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the war itself. The queen leaned against his shoulder, tears forming in her golden eyes. "You came for me," she whispered. Ryan smiled, brushing a strand of her silver hair away from her face. "Always." The stars above were burning. The city lay in ruins. And yet, for the first time, Queen Zalara felt truly safe. Because now, she understood her human wasn't weak, he was the strongest being she had ever known. Smoke still covered the city of Virine Prime. The air was heavy, with the smell of burnt metal and the cries of the wounded. The war was not over yet. Even though the core warlord had fallen, his army still raged across the planet like wildfire. Ryan stood beside Queen Zalara on the shattered balcony of the palace. From there they could see the ruins of their once bright capital. Flames burned where gardens once bloomed, and ships lay broken across the mountains. The queen's golden armor was cracked, her crown missing. Her proud eyes were tired yet filled with fire. She looked at Ryan, her human husband, now standing in his battle armor, bruised and bleeding but still ready to fight. "You've done enough, Ryan," she said softly, touching his face. "Let me lead the last attack. Rest now." But Ryan shook his head. "I can't rest while they're still out there." He looked out at the burning horizon.
"They'll come again, Zalara."
"And next time they won't just want your throne, they'll want your people gone." She frowned. "Then what do you plan to do?" Ryan turned toward his ship, the old human dropship that had carried him here. Its engines hummed weakly, and on the side faint letters could still be read. EDF, Earth Defense Force. "I didn't come alone," he said. Zalara's eyes widened.
"What do you mean?"
Ryan pressed a button on his wristband. A deep rumble echoed through the clouds above them. Moments later, the night sky began to light up, not with fire, but with hundreds of tiny blue flares. The Queen gasped as human warships appeared through the smoke, breaking through orbit like falling stars. They were smaller than Virine ships, older and less advanced, but there were many of them. Ryan's voice trembled with emotion as he looked up. "That's the 7th Human Fleet, old friends." People who never forgot what it means to protect. For a moment, Zalara couldn't speak. She had spent her life believing the Virine were the strongest beings in the galaxy. But now, as she saw these fragile, determined humans rushing into the fire to save a world not their own, she finally understood what real strength looked like. Ryan turned to her. "I sent the distress signal weeks ago, before you even left for battle. I knew this war wouldn't end easily. Humans, we don't walk away from the ones we love." Before she could answer, the comms came alive. A human voice spoke through the static. "Captain Hale, we received your signal. Earth stands with you." Ryan smiled faintly, his voice steady. "Then let's show them what humanity means." He climbed into the pilot seat of his ship, his armor scarred and blood-stained. Zalara grabbed his arm, fear flashing in her eyes. "You can't go alone," she pleaded. "You've already done enough, please. Don't make me lose you." Ryan looked at her gently, his hand resting on hers. "You won't lose me. But if I don't stop them now, there won't be anything left to protect." She wanted to command him to stay. She was a queen. She could order whole armies with a word. But at that moment, she wasn't a queen. She was a wife watching the man she loved walk toward danger. "Ryan," she whispered. "Come back to me," he gave her a soft smile. "Always." Then his ship lifted off, fire streaming behind it. The engines roared as he rose into the burning sky, joining the human fleet above. The queen watched from the balcony, tears shining in her eyes. Around her, her soldiers bowed their heads, watching the small human vessel vanish into the clouds. Minutes later, the heavens exploded with light. Human ships clashed with the core reinforcements in a battle that shook the planet. Ryan's voice came through the comms one last time, calm, steady, and full of love. For Earth, for Virene, for her. Then silence. The sky burned with explosions, brighter than any sunrise the Queen had ever seen, and in that blinding light she understood. Human strength was not just in weapons or war. It was in sacrifice, in courage, in love so deep it could defy galaxies. And as she stood there, her heart breaking yet filled with pride, Queen Zalara whispered into the wind, "My human. My strength." The sky above Virene Prime was still burning. The human and core fleets clashed among the stars, their weapons lighting up the darkness like storms of fire. From the palace balcony, Queen Zalara stood in silence, her eyes locked on the heavens. The explosions looked like tiny stars dying one by one. Every time a human ship went dark, her heart clenched tighter. She could hear their last radio calls echoing faintly through the comms, humans shouting orders, laughing even as they faced death, never surrendering. And somewhere up there, in the heart of that chaos, was Ryan Hale, her husband, her human, the man who had turned her world upside down. Her generals begged her to retreat underground, to hide in the emergency bunkers. "Your Majesty, it's too dangerous here," they cried, but she refused to move. "I will not hide while he fights for me," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "If he can face the fire, so can I." She stood there for hours, watching the endless flashes in the sky. Her hand clutched the necklace Ryan had given her, a simple metal tag from his military days, something he said humans wore to be identified if they fell. It was scratched, old, and nothing like her royal jewels. Yet to her it was the most precious thing in the universe. Then suddenly the comms crackled. A familiar voice came through, faint, tired, but alive. "Zalara, are you there?" Her breath caught. "Ryan! Ryan, I'm here! Where are you?" Static filled the air, followed by his voice again, strained but calm. "We're pushing them back. The fleet's holding, but their command ship, it's huge. I need to finish this." "No," she cried. "You've done enough. Come back to me, please. You've already won." There was a pause. Then his voice softened. "You once told me humans were fragile. Maybe you were right. But we're stubborn too. We don't stop until the people we love are safe." Tears streamed down her golden cheeks. "Ryan, please," he cut her off gently. "If anything happens, remember this. You showed me what it means to love beyond worlds. You made me believe that even among stars there's something worth fighting for." The signal began to fade. "Ryan!" she shouted desperately. "Don't you dare leave me." But only silence answered her. Moments later, a massive explosion lit up the sky, brighter than all the rest. The shockwave rippled across the clouds, shaking the palace to its core. The core flagship, their largest and deadliest ship, shattered into 1,000 burning pieces. The battle ended in seconds. The remaining core forces began to flee. The war was finally over, but the human ships, they were gone too. Queen Zalara fell to her knees. The light from the fires reflected in her tear-filled eyes. The sound of victory was drowned by the sound of her breaking heart. Her guards found her hours later, still kneeling, still clutching the metal tag against her chest. She didn't speak a word. She didn't move. The mighty queen who once conquered galaxies now sat silently in the ruins, weeping for one human soul. Days passed. The fires went out, the skies cleared, and peace slowly returned. But inside the palace, silence ruled. Zalara didn't attend meetings. She didn't wear her crown. She spent her days in the garden where Ryan once liked to read, sitting beside the old fountain he had repaired. Sometimes she thought she heard his voice in the wind. Sometimes at night she saw a flicker of light in the stars and hoped it was him, somehow, somewhere, watching her. Her people didn't understand the depth of her grief. They tried to celebrate the victory, but the queen never smiled again. And one night, as she stood on the same balcony where he had last held her hand, she whispered softly into the night sky, "You showed me what true strength is, my love. And now I must learn to live with it." The stars shimmered gently above her, as if bowing in respect, for across the galaxy, the story of the human who loved an alien queen and gave everything for her had already begun to spread. Weeks turned into months. The scars of war slowly faded from Virine Prime, but the wound inside Queen Zalara's heart never healed. Every morning she stood on the palace balcony, gazing up at the sky where Ryan had vanished. She still wore his metal tag around her neck, a small, cold piece of earth that never left her. Her people called her the Silent Queen now. They admired her courage, but few knew the pain that hid behind her calm eyes. Then one day a human ship appeared on the edge of the system. It wasn't a warship. It was small, damaged, limping through space as if it had traveled too far and too long. The guards rushed to inform her, "Your Majesty, a vessel with human markings has arrived. It bears the crest of the Sol Fleet." Zalara's heart stopped for a moment. Hope flickered painfully inside her. "Bring it in," she whispered. "Now." When the ship landed, the bay doors opened with a hiss of steam, and there, among the smoke and sparks, a figure stepped out. It was Ryan. His armor was scorched, his face thin and tired, but his eyes were the same warm brown that had once melted the queen's heart. Zalara froze. For a moment she thought it was another dream. Then he smiled. That same crooked human smile that had once annoyed her so much in the beginning. "Miss me, Your Majesty?" he said weakly. Her composure broke instantly. She ran to him, tears flooding down her cheeks, and threw her arms around him. "You fool," she whispered through her sobs. "You promised me you'd return, and still you made me wait so long." Ryan held her tightly. "I had to make sure the war was truly over. The explosion. It didn't kill me, but it threw my ship across half the galaxy. It took me months to find my way back." She pulled back slightly, touching his face gently. "You stubborn human. You came back to me." He smiled faintly. "Didn't I tell you? Humans never stop fighting, and especially for love." That night the palace was alive with light again. The entire world of Virine Prime celebrated the return of the Star General, the human who had ended the war. But for Zalara, none of that mattered. All she cared about was that he was there beside her, breathing real. As they sat together on the balcony, Ryan looked at the stars. "You know, back on Earth we have a saying, 'Love conquers all.' I used to think it was just words." Zalara smiled softly. "And now?" "Now," he said, looking at her with tired but peaceful eyes. "I know it's true. Even across galaxies." She leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Years passed. The human and the alien queen ruled together, not through fear or conquest, but through compassion. The human spirit and the alien heart brought peace between their species. Children from both worlds learned each other's language, shared stories, and grew up without the hatred their parents once knew. And whenever anyone asked the queen how peace began, she always told them one thing: "It began when a human showed me what strength really means." When Ryan grew old, his body grew weaker, but his will never did. The queen stayed by his side, her golden hands holding his until the very end. On his final night, he whispered softly to her, "Don't cry. Humans die, but love doesn't." Zalara kissed his forehead, tears falling silently. "Then I will love you beyond time." When he closed his eyes for the last time, the stars above the palace shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself was saluting the man who changed it forever. Centuries later, the legend of the human king was still told across galaxies. Statues of Ryan Hale stood beside Queen Zalara's, hand in hand, forever united. And every time a storm lit up the sky above Virine Prime, the people said it was their love, still burning, still alive among the stars. Because even in the endless expanse of the universe, a human heart had proven that love is the greatest strength of all.